You are listening to the Success Diaries podcast. I'm your hostess, Bree Seeley, a creative growth strategist and top entrepreneur coach on Google. The Success Diaries is your invitation to do success on your own terms. Every episode features interviews with entrepreneurs and change makers around the world living their success on their terms. On today's episode, we welcome Reuben Driedger. Reuben is a successful online business coach. He began his entrepreneurial career as an online fitness coach, and after growing his business to over 6 figures, he began to remark on the increasing number of people asking, "How did you do it?" He then decided to make the transition to business coaching. In the last 4 years, Reuben has helped over 400 entrepreneurs move their businesses online. Hello, Success Diaries listeners. Bree Seeley back again with another fantastic guest. Super excited to introduce you all to Reuben. Hello, Reuben. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, Bree. Thank you for having me on. I'm honestly very excited about this.
Yes. So for everyone listening, Reuben and I met in a podcast community, and he interviewed me on his podcast, The Creators Show, and now I get to interview him for mine. So super excited. Loved our conversation before, so I have a feeling this one will be equally as beneficial and impactful.
Perfect. Well, let's dive in.
Awesome. So first question, same question every episode. What is your definition of success? What does that mean to you? What does it look like? How does it show up in your life?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so, there's so many people that say success is one thing or the other. Kind of how I think about it is I have a very strong belief that every single person has, you can call it a calling on their life or something that they were kind of created to do. And I truly believe that success is basically pursuing that calling and not necessarily being perfect at it or getting to it super fast. I would say success is progressing towards your calling every single day and pushing after it. So this is a bit of a generic kind of definition, but I think it's honestly what I would say the most successful people in the world, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, but even if it's, I actually kind of love that it's generic, and here's why. Because, everyone needs to take the time to figure out what that calling is, right? Like I refer to it as your genius. How do you know what that is? How do you identify that? And then how do you live by that every day? And I think that not enough people do that process for themselves. And by keeping your answer generic, what I love is hopefully every listener here is going to be able to find themselves in that answer. So talk to us a little bit about how you found that for yourself.
Yeah, totally. So it's a long story. I'm going to condense it. But growing up, grew up in a very small town, actually out in the country, like close to a village of like 300 people, basically. But growing up, I always felt like, you know what, I wanted to do something big. I wanted to, and that's all I could really say. I was like, I feel like I'm called to something big, and I didn't know what it was, but I had the feeling. And I tried a couple of things. I went to some university. I worked a couple different jobs in construction, laying bricks. I did even high-rise window cleaning. So going off the side of skyscrapers and cleaning the windows, and all of it just wasn't a good fit. It just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel like I could actually progress. I couldn't do something great. And it was basically when I got married. My wife was in entrepreneurship already. She grew up in a family that was all about it. And I saw her building a business, and she was doing really well. And I was like, man, this is something that I could build into something great. Like I can control it. And so I started trying a couple different things. Some of it kind of worked, some of it didn't, as far as businesses went. And I started to really kind of delve into the coaching world, where we started as my wife was actually an online health coach, and I became an online fitness coach. And so I really started helping people in that, really aiding them, coaching and serving and all those really great things. And that have led me to eventually, really one of the big things that I started to realize is that I felt called to help other people not go through the basically the financial hardship that my wife and I went through, the stress that it put on our marriage. and also just in figuring out how to do this whole entrepreneurship thing. And so it's been slowly evolving. And honestly, I even tell people right now, as far as my calling goes, I truly believe that what I'm doing right now is training for what I'm called to do in a decade from now. And so I kind of have a feeling that the calling evolves as you evolve. And so right now it's kind of here, and I'm excited to see where it takes me.
Beautiful. So there's two things that you've kind of touched on that I want to dive a little bit deeper into. The one of the first things you said actually in your last answer was a little bit about like perfection. So a lot
Mm,
of what I see with entrepreneurs is that they wait to take action until everything's perfect, right? Until they know
yeah.
exactly what their calling is and know exactly how it's going to look and exactly what they're going to do. And I know you and I think very similarly because of our past
Hmm.
conversation. So talk to me if you were talking to an entrepreneur that was like, well, I can't take action yet, or I can't move forward, or I can't start down this journey because
Mm.
I don't know how it's going to look and it's not perfect yet. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely, I mean, we all subconsciously maybe, or maybe it's consciously know that perfect doesn't exist for number one. Like it just really doesn't. Like we live in a world that you're never going to have something absolutely perfect. It could be closer or further away, but first of all, you'll never achieve perfection. And so there's something that I always talk about, like people always say practice makes perfect. I always talk about how practice makes progress. And it's something that I share with friends, I share with clients, I share with different people a lot of the time is like, hey, as long as you're progressing, it doesn't matter if it's really fast or really slow. The key is that you're moving forward, not backwards. And so, whether it's taking small baby steps every single day or every single week towards what you are called to, at least be moving forward. That's the least you could do for yourself.
100%. And I will add on to that and also say that for what I've found within myself and my clients is that, you know, we all want the path very clearly laid out in front of us, right? Like I want to
Hmm.
stand where I'm standing and see every single step between here and where I want to be. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because what
Hmm.
happens is the universe reveals like the next two or three steps. And then as we
Hmm.
take one or two of those steps, then the next two or three steps are revealed. And so this idea of like having to know and having to hold on to and like be in control of seeing the full path all at once before you can take a step. And I love how your progress, not perfection, speaks to that as well. It's like as you progress, things get clearer and clearer and clearer. Like you mentioned,
Hmm.
you're in
Exactly.
training right now for 10 years from now, but you don't necessarily know exactly what that 10 years from now is going to look like.
Exactly. And honestly, like, and this is something I've learned from mentors, and now I kind of live by it, is that anything really past 3 months from now is just a wild guess, to be completely honest. I mean, 3 months ago, the world looked like considerably different. And no one knew what was going to happen, or maybe some people did, but like the majority didn't. And I think in 3 months from now, it's going to look a lot different than most people think. That's why I mean, I love the idea of like a 90-day sprint or a 90-day challenge or whatever it is. Cause yeah, you can focus really hard at something for 90 days, but then you need to resurface because at that point, there could be some different things that you need to kind of put into your calculations of where you want to end up. So, yes, have the goals, have the vision, but understand that the path is going to probably change and look different and honestly, maybe even better for you as you go along.
Yeah, and what I love about that is actually kind of leads into my next question. You also talked about this feeling along your journey of like knowing what like didn't
Mhm.
feel right. And I find that it's really important, oftentimes we can start off on our path and think we know everything.
Yeah.
And that when we approach it that way, we end up missing those feelings of like, oh, this just doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah.
So, how did you develop your kind of like relationship with that intuitive sense where you kind of check in with what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and you allow that to help guide you down your path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think oftentimes it came in the form of a rude awakening or just honestly a frustration and pain with life. I know a lot of the times when I was working construction, there was winters here in Canada where I got laid off like a couple times just because it was so slow. And so some of the change was kind of forced upon me in the sense of I wasn't in control when I thought this job was safe. It wasn't. But other times it just came in basically I was working these jobs and just realizing like, there is a cap to this. I like the only way that I can actually grow something is if I go beyond what this is. And then kind of the third thing I would take on to there is a lot of the work I was doing was literally just not fulfilling, because even though, yes, I was putting wood together or laying bricks, it wasn't changing someone's life in the way I wanted it to. Not saying that those things, obviously those things are necessary and do benefit people, but it wasn't the type of impact that I felt joy from, if that makes sense. I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to be more like tangibly impactful. And so there's a couple pieces there that I just had to work on being self-aware of, like, this doesn't fit. And that doesn't mean it's bad or that it's not, it was a good thing that I did it for that time. I'm okay with that. But I was self-aware to be like, this is not my end game.
Yeah, I think joy is such a huge part of our calling. As we talked about in my episode with you, I thought my calling was one thing and
Right.
then realized that I actually didn't enjoy it like I
Mm-hmm.
thought I did. And so when people are looking at, what is my calling, joy is such a huge aspect of it, because just because you're good at something doesn't mean it's what you're supposed to be doing with your life.
100%. No, and it's. I was talking to someone yesterday who they're kind of going through a rough season in life right now, and they just don't really have the direction. And I can tell by asking them questions that they feel like they need to pursue a future that whether you can call it society or family has put on them. And I know this is something you and I actually talked about quite in depth on my podcast.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, and you said this, need to really ask the question, what do I truly want? And what do I truly feel like, whether it's the universe or God or whatever it is, called me to do? And kind of, you need to rip off what society thinks, what my family thinks, what's the like kind of normal route in life, and really actually turn inward. And I think that that's such an important key that, honestly, I mean, it's taken me years to do it. And I feel like every single month I get better at it and the vision gets more clear. But it comes from taking those steps and asking yourselves those questions.
Well, and thank you for just solidifying and validating the entire reason I started this podcast in the first place. Because,
Good.
I mean, that's, I was really having that conversation with a former client. She was one of the first episodes I released on the podcast, really
Hmm.
about how she had this idea of, like, as a coach, her business had to look a certain way, or, these were the certain rules she had to follow in order to be successful. And, you know, if you're someone that's listening to this episode and you've listened to all the other episodes and you're like, God, all these people just say the same fucking thing. Like, I just want to point out for a second, there's a reason
Yeah.
that we all say the same thing, because the only process to find your success is to create it for yourself inside first. That's where it
Mm-hmm.
all happens first. So, like Reuben's talking about, the self-awareness, knowing yourself, knowing your joy, what fulfills you, what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and
Mm-hmm.
then having the courage to take those steps forward for that progress, not the
Yeah.
perfection.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And like I'm so happy that I can validate your podcast, because I truly do believe it. And honestly, I honestly get sad. I have days where I think about whether it's friends or whether it's people that I know, or even clients that I had that maybe didn't pursue fully what they should have pursued, in my opinion, again. And honestly, I get sad because I truly believe that there's so many heart-centered people out there that should be pursuing something. And now, I think a really important thing to realize is not everyone's called to necessarily what you or I personally do. One of the things that, like, getting into entrepreneurship, I was always like, oh my gosh, everyone needs to do this. And I slowly started to mature a little bit, and I was like, okay, no, everyone, again, their success story or their calling is different. It could be that some people, their literal calling is to be a janitor at a school who pours into the kids at the school, does an immaculate job, and progress in his calling to be that person for that school. And I think that someone can live such a beautiful life with that. just as beautiful as a life of an entrepreneur who makes $1 million a year and is feeding orphans with his nonprofit. I truly believe that they both succeeded at the end of the day because, and this goes back to, and again, you don't have to be like a person who believes in God or the universe, but there's a parable often that I think about. It's a spiritual parable talking about how God gave people different amounts of talent or different amounts of money, whatever it is. And how the main point of the story was just that you used it and multiplied it rather than hid your talents. And I think that's such a strong point for people in life, is to recognize that not all of us look the same way as far as talent goes or skill goes or natural calling or whatever it is. That's not the key. The key is that you use it. And that's what I think is just so important.
That's beautiful. I really like that. And I am the same way, I fiercely advocate for entrepreneurship while also understanding that it's not for everyone. But
Totally.
again, like if you're not willing to sit down and really look at, okay, what is for me? I think there's always going to be something missing. Like if you're
Yep.
just following what other people told you, I had two kind of major points in my life where I could have followed um,
Mm.
the status quo or just followed the easy path, right? Like the first one was right out of college. My boyfriend was getting ready to propose to me. We had
Mm.
talked about, he wanted like 2.5 children and to stay in Minnesota for the rest of his life and all of
Right.
these things. And I seriously, for a hot second, did consider it because I was like, oh, maybe it'll just be easier that way. If
Mm.
I just follow a path that's already prescribed for me, maybe it would
Right.
be easier. And look at what if I had made that decision. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I would have lasted very long in it. I know for sure that I would have been miserable in it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I look at the conscious creation, and you and I talked about this on your show as well, versus just kind of defaulting into, kind of what's given to us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that basically teeter-totter is exactly what we've been talking about, which is progress rather than regress, right? It's literally when you step into creation mode again, it doesn't have to look crazy. As long as you're progressing and you're using what you have, that's the key. And that's why, I mean, that's why so many people, you've heard the cliche saying of like fall in love with the process rather than a destination, because destinations are very arbitrary. Like whether it's hitting six figures or whether it's hitting $1 million business, it's kind of arbitrary, to be completely honest. The key is just falling in love with the process and taking those steps. So no, I completely agree with you.
So now if someone were listening to this and they were in a similar spot to where you were before you realized that entrepreneurship was for you, and
Hmm.
really you were still doing what you were, and what you were doing was fine, but you weren't finding that fulfillment and that joy
Hmm.
in it. What do you feel like is kind of the first step forward in that progress
Yeah.
to begin moving towards your calling?
Yeah, so and this is said a little bit with a cheeky sense to it all, but I truly believe that the faster you try stuff, the faster you're going to fail at stuff to figure out what you want to do. Because I tried like five things within a year, and I pushed really hard at all of them until I figured out which one I wanted to do. And so I truly believe a lot of people are scared to try new stuff. I would basically go towards the whole like exposure therapy of like exposing yourself to a lot of new stuff really, really fast. And you're gonna find out quickly which one you want to choose and which one doesn't fit as well. And so I think for me it was just like try out a lot of stuff. Life, like even though I mean, it depends how it doesn't really matter what age you are. You have time to figure it out. So try out a bunch of things that you've maybe thought of or wanted to try, or other people have said, hey, you'd be good at this, and see which one. And of course, it comes down to self awareness, really feels like it fits.
I call that the throw the spaghetti on the wall to see which one sticks phase of
Perfect.
life.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. No, exactly.
It's one of my favorites. I used to live in Italy, and that's how you tell if pasta's
Oh,
done.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Yeah, yeah. Reuben, you're awesome. I really appreciate this. If people want to find you, connect with you, well, first off, let me plug. you all should go listen to the Creator Show podcast. That go listen to my episode, go listen to everyone else's episodes. Reuben is a great interviewer. Go check that out. But if people wanted to find you another way or connect with you another way, where do they go?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of pushing our Instagram a little bit these days. So it's just Reuben Driedger on Instagram, no spaces, no dots, just the name. And you can kind of see a little bit of what we do and how we serve people.
Love it. In fact, actually, I don't know if you've been on Instagram yet today, Reuben, and people are listening to this. It's not today when you're listening to it, but my post that just went up like an hour ago or whatever was of our interview.
Oh, fabulous. So, I think I saw something come through, but I'll make sure to go share it out a little bit.
Yeah. Instagram is my favorite. So 100% advocate for people joining you there. Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for this. I really, really appreciate it. You've been a great interview, and thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure. And thank you everyone for listening. Hope you found it enjoyable.
Wait, don't go yet. I wanted to say a quick thank you for joining me for this episode today. I am so incredibly grateful you are here. 2 last quick things. 1, I want to hear what's in your Success Diaries. So hop on over to Instagram, come find me at Bree Seeley to share with me what your definition of success is and how you're living that definition this week. Second thing, if you are an entrepreneur and you are looking to build or scale your tailor-made business to monetize your genius, I have a great free course I would love to share with you. You can grab it at breeseeley.com/yes. This course is really going to help you do all of the necessary work to build and scale a business that is aligned with your unapologetic self. Much love to you today and every day. I will see you next week on the Success Diaries, which also reminds me, please be sure to subscribe so that you can get this in your notifications every single week. Bye for now, friends.